Mina Kimes, Tim Kalisha, Sarah Spain, Frank Isola. Not an athletic bone in their body. Today, we're going to talk about Frank's latest report, which I thought was a joke when you filed it. Isiah Thomas, dark horse candidate for the Knicks. Frank, smile if you're joking. I guess not. Also, check this out. The Atlanta Hawks plan for next year. Bar on the baseline, barbershop facing the court, golf simulators in luxury suites. Will there be a basketball? They want people to watch the basketball. That's my question.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reali.
Around the Horn investigation. Inside the Chris Paul to Houston trade. Michael Eaves, ESPN report of the clash between Paul and Doc Rivers. And how Doc favored his son Austin Rivers at practice, in meetings. And how Doc said no to a trade for Carmelo Anthony that included Austin Rivers. Austin denies this. Doc denied it to TMZ. Tim, could this be true? And could it have led to a trade?
Well, I think it could definitely be true. Even when people deny things, that means they perceive something to be a small problem or a non-issue. The other side or someone else may have seen it very differently. It might have been one of 12 things that led to Chris Paul wanting out. I think we've seen things over time. Even when DeAndre Jordan left the team for about 48 hours 2 years ago to come to Dallas, there were stories about him and Chris Paul and friction there. So when you're a team that is constantly expected to do more and you produce less, like the Clippers have, there have to be all sorts of things going on that can lead to this breakup.
Sarah, when you hear a report that it's a coach who's got a son on the team and maybe he's favoring the son and the star point guard doesn't necessarily like that, what do you think?
I think that seems like it would be pretty easy to believe. It would be a complicated situation anywhere to have the father-son and not have the claims of nepotism in any way. And then you add in that conversation about a trade that probably should have happened. And you think Doc and Austin are going to come forward and say, you know what, actually he's right. I've been treating him better than everybody else this entire time. Of course they're going to deny it. Now listen, I don't think Chris Paul would leave if this team was consistently performing up to expectation and he had that little beef. The point is you add that alongside them constantly underperforming and him learning that this current iteration of the Clippers was never going to get past that second round and deciding, look, time to go elsewhere. I'm 32.
Frank, covering the league, have you ever heard this?
Well, absolutely. It's out there. But I started thinking about Moises Alou playing for his father, Felipe Alou, in baseball, Michael Bradley playing for his father on the national team with soccer, which did cause a little bit of friction. But this is something where the kid is a backup. He's not even the sixth man of the year on his own team. Jamal Crawford is. To say he's getting preferential treatment, to me, he becomes the easy scapegoat for a team that 2 years ago blew a 19-point lead. Chris Paul was part of that, so was Blake Griffin. I think the Chris Paul-Blake Griffin dynamic had a lot more to do with this than Doc Rivers, Austin Rivers, all that other nonsense.
Mina Kimes.
I find it completely believable. Anyone who's ever played youth sports know it's never a good thing when the coach's kid is on the team. Everyone's always looking to see if he gets extra orange slices. And look at this trade. Even if it didn't happen, it's a very revealing hypothetical because this is the team as constructed, has a lot of veterans, not a lot of good young role players. Austin Rivers is their best trade asset, and that is a problem. That is a big reason, I think, why Chris Paul is no longer on this team.
Frank, you had heard the Carmelo to L.A. reporting during the season, and did you think that was going to happen? Were you surprised when it didn't happen?
Well, it didn't make, to me, it didn't make much sense for the Knicks because they were getting back Jamal Crawford, Austin Rivers. That was going to be a lot of money. I think it made a lot of sense from the Clippers standpoint. You get off that money, you get Carmelo Anthony, who's better than the players that you're giving up. But remember, whenever you're dealing with Carmelo Anthony and the Clippers and the Knicks, it takes three to tango because he had the no-trade clause. So definitely a lot of talk, but I don't think the Knicks wanted to take on those big contracts.
What do you think Doc Rivers' future as president of the Clippers is, Tim Kalisha?
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, a lot of folks think they did well in this trade, given that they were going to lose Chris Paul for nothing. At least they got some players and some tradable assets, but it's going to be how they manage that. And obviously what they do with Blake Griffin, if he stays.
Anyone else want to address that? I mean, we know he's coach, and maybe that's not going anywhere, but as team president, Sarah?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a much shorter leash than you might have imagined. He is not carrying with him the same credibility that he had when he came to the Clippers. It's been a long time now since that title win, and it's been many years with a team that has underperformed more than almost any in terms of regular season success playing out over the postseason. And at some point, they're going to decide that he doesn't have that shine on him like he used to.
And remember, Jerry West is there as a consultant. You always have to factor that
Exactly.
in. Could he be the guy replacing him one day?
Well, this is the point that Tim also was just making. You grade him high for getting something for Chris Paul, but in the process, you blew up the team to do it. Mina Kimes, what do you think of a president when they do that?
I think sometimes you have to blow up a team, and this was the case. They could not continue down the same path with the same result every year. Jerry West, new sheriff in town.
We'll move on. Around the Horn investigation, part 2. Tim McMahon, ESPN report. The Rockets think they're getting Carmelo Anthony or Paul George. Daryl Morey has already called this a weapons race with Golden State. We're talking about Houston and the addition of Chris Paul, Sarah, and the weapons race with Golden State. You think Morey has that right?
Well, I think he's right that it's a weapons race. We're seeing that the way the NBA works now is clearly about getting top-heavy with stars. But teams that have complementary weapons usually fare better than teams that have duplicate weapons. You need to hit by air, land, and sea. And right now they've got two guys on the land that are both probably doing similar things. That's not to say that they can't coexist and find success. But I think when you're looking to have a weapons race, you need to have more diversity. And I wonder if they're going to discover that having both those guys out there at the same time might not give you much on the defensive side, and how are you going to balance two guys that are both top 10 in possessions?
Okay, but the McMahon report would suggest that they are in it for Carmelo Anthony, let me say the name before you can, Frank, or Paul George. Maybe they can do it by sea or by air, to use Sarah's expression. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, she threw all the weapons at us. I think if they can get Paul George, I really do believe that they would close the gap with the Golden State Warriors. Remember, in an
close
athletic
the gap
league,
as an even?
Absolutely. In an athletic league where you need guys that can defend on the perimeter, Paul George on Kevin Durant. It actually makes some sense. And I think they went out and got Chris Paul because they believe all these players in the league love Chris Paul, except for Blake Griffin, and they all want to play with him. So maybe they can attract guys to come play with Chris Paul, James Harden. I agree with Daryl Morey.
But the headline there from Frank was close the gap with the Warriors. Are they a Paul George away? Now that they have Harden and they have Chris Paul, Mina Kimes, and I want you to address how you think they're going to work together. If they add Paul George, are they even with the Warriors, like Frank just said?
Yes, but I think it's going to take adding Paul George. But first, they have to figure out, as everyone's been saying, how these two ball-dominant guards are going to work together. They have to figure out if they need to adjust the pace for Chris Paul. Look, when one of the best players in the NBA lands on your doorstep, you take him in. Then you have to figure out how he fits in with the family. I think this third piece could take them over the top and make them competitive with the Warriors.
All right. I know Sarah, with all the athletic bones in her body, she wants to throw a javelin at Frank Isola for thinking that the Rockets will have caught the Warriors with an addition once more of Paul George. But first, we'll go to Kalishaw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to catch him no matter what happens. I applaud Daryl Morey for being aggressive and getting this done, but that just raises so many questions about how things are going to work with these guys. Is Chris Paul going to cover every point guard every night? Is he going to guard Westbrook and Curry and all the great point guards? Because you don't want James Harden over there guarding him. But, you know, if you've got a player like Paul George who can defend, that would help some. But I still think Golden State, they just fit together better.
All right, Sarah, go after it.
Frank and Mina are out of their minds if they think this is even. Listen, yeah, you're going to have some offensive firepower if you've got those three guys, if Paul George does come. But you've got James Harden, who can't guard anyone. You've got Chris Paul, who's limited in who he can guard. You've now put Paul George on Kevin Durant. And I noticed that you stopped there. You're like, you're Paul George on Kevin Durant. And then you kept moving because, listen, they are not matching up with anybody else on that Warriors team. What are you doing on the defensive end against the Warriors?
Answer the question, Frank.
You know, you're unbelievable. Your team was fighting to get into the playoffs. The Rockets had the third best record in the NBA,
what does my
Sarah.
team have to do with anything?
They had
Answer
the
question.
third best
They just
record in the
lost
NBA.
Patrick Beverley,
They're
the
adding
best
Chris
defender in the
Paul
deal.
and Paul George. That's not good. They had the third best record.
Frank, if you're bringing up her team, we have to say, what's your team, Frank?
Yeah.
Not
Your
even
team is
playing
on the garbage
basketball,
fire,
the
Frank.
New York Knicks. Oh, that is an unfortunate turn of
Let's
events.
talk about
too.
Isiah Thomas. That's exciting.
You know, two things with this, okay? Because we had a similar conversation. There's just one basketball. We saw what that was when Durant was added to Curry and Klay Thompson. And
Right.
you know what? The Warriors were able to figure it out. But the other part of this, I'm still not sure I'm totally comprehending here is James Harden just had the best season of his career, and he had it mostly, I think, because he was playing the point guard position. And after 1 year, they kind of have to move away from that now with Chris Paul. That's, I think, the thing it's going to take some getting used to. We're going to move on now. Around the Horn investigation, part 3. Why Frank Isola doesn't smile in his photo on the Daily News website. I mean, what's that about?
How bad is that photo? Jeez.
Your team, Frank. All right, here we go, Sarah. Get on Frank for his team. What are they going to do now that fills out? And your report today, Mr. Isola, that a dark horse candidate is Isiah Thomas. Are you serious here? Oh, you serious?
He'll never come back to Madison Square Garden. Jim Dolan tried to hire him as a consultant. Then he went back to college. He'll never come back to the Garden. He works there now as the president of the New York Liberty. Why do you think he took that job at the Liberty? It's all about a way to get back in with the Knicks. Now, listen, there's a lot of things I have to factor into it. He's definitely a candidate. Doesn't mean he's going to get the job. But believe me, Isiah Thomas is involved on some level. By the way, Jim Dolan 6 years ago said, he's a friend of mine. I will always solicit his views. He'll be a friend of the organization and of mine forever. Remember that.
So that's the reporting, and you clearly think it's on the table. Now the opinion. Give it to me. What would this mean? Even for the fans who I think have been tweeting out dancing videos for like the last 24 hours since Phil, how could you process this if you're a Knicks fan? Bring Isiah back? We already know what the dark ages were.
Yeah. What if they do it on a Friday afternoon in July where everyone's out at the beach? It happens. You take the initial hit, and then you move on. That's what will happen. You watch.
Mina Kimes?
This is why I was laughing yesterday when Knicks fans were cheering, because players come and go, coaches come and go, presidents come and go, but owners are forever. Phil Jackson was terrible for 3 years. Jim Dolan has been Jim Dolan his entire life. This would be a terrible, terrible move. Isiah, his weaknesses are patience and managing the cap, two things the Knicks need to do right now, so obviously they're going to do it.
Tim Kalishaw. That's good.
I mean, I would say you never rule out anything. You never rule out anything with the Knicks, but this seems like something we really ought to be able to rule out, given how badly it went. The Knicks seem obsessed with you hire somebody really famous to run your team instead of somebody really good. Did anyone know who Bob Myers was before he was running Golden State a few years ago? Now he's executive of the year and he has the greatest team around.
Sarah
That's
Spain.
what you need.
Yeah, let's talk about your team, Frank. Listen,
Okay,
first
here
of
we
all,
go.
obviously we know that this is absolutely would be a terrible, terrible move. We also hear the names of David Griffin and Usai Ujiri, probably guys that make more sense and are more likely to get the gig. But in this case, not only do you have a guy who's going to blow all your money on players, but he's also going to cost you $11 million in lawsuits, which is really going over the top. He's doubling down on Phil Jackson overspending on veterans by overspending on players, getting rid of cap space, messing things up on the court, and absolutely offending everybody that's ever been in his presence off the court. Good luck, Knicks fans. Find a new team.
Frank, we'll give you the last word.
Well, once again, I'm reporting this. I didn't say it's going
Right,
to happen.
no. We gave you the moment for the reporting, and I gave you a moment for your opinion.
I think,
and you made the
right
prediction
now,
it could happen.
they're going to try to hire Isiah Ujiri from Toronto, but you're going to have to give up compensation, maybe a first-round pick. Do you want to do that?
Isiah Thomas back to the Knicks. Isiah Thomas wouldn't be the best Isiah Thomas for the Knicks
From
job
Chicago.
right now. I'd rather have
Sarah
a
Spain's
player
hometown.
and team president if they took him from the Celtics. We're going to take a break right here. Buy or sell us next.
Buy or sell.
Chris Bryant, sprained ankle. Add that to the Montero DFA, the Schwarber demotion, and 500 nearly at the halfway point. They were 24 games over 500 this time last year. Sarah, you've said this is a World Series hangover. At what point are we at a tipping point?
Yeah, I mean, the only good news for the Cubs right now is that the NL Central is so bad that they're a game out of first place, even though they're a 500 team. And that's really all you can sit back on if you're anyone trying to look for a silver lining on this. The pitchers have underperformed. They're 29th in batting average in the league. They're injured. They're superstar of the World
Let me
Series
ask you
down
this.
in AAA.
The Montero is one glimpse into this. Do you believe the team's divided in some way?
No, I don't think there's a clubhouse issue at all. In fact, Montero was on ESPN 1000, and on his way out, when he could have gone in any direction he wanted in answering that question, he said, the clubhouse is great. There are no issues.
Okay.
And Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer have said the same. The clubhouse is great. They don't have a lot of room to celebrate. That party room at Wrigley Field's not getting a lot of action. I think they're getting along fine. They'd get along even better if they won some more games.
Frank, how are you looking at the Cubs right now?
Yeah, and Montero's the same guy that was complaining the day of the parade about the communication between he and the manager. I think it has a lot to do with that starting pitching staff being a little worn out from the long playoff run that they had. I think, one of their top hitters is in AAA. They're lucky, Sarah, that they play in a poor division because right now, make a move around the deadline, they'll be fine.
Times?
I think right now the Cubs are sort of a perfect storm of problems. The injury issues are real. The clubhouse issues, while small, are real, but it's all amplified by the fact that they're underperforming in every area. You know, Chris Bryant being hurt would be bad in any situation, but it's especially bad right now because he's the only Cub with an OPS over 900. This is a team that currently ranks 29th out of 30 teams in batting average. That is their biggest problem.
I liked it better the first time I heard it when Sarah Spain said it, Mina Kimes. All right, rookie. Keep the ears on. Kalisha, how about you?
I honestly think they were a little too young. I mean, they did all this magical stuff, and I'm talking mostly about the everyday team and not the starting pitching. But you had guys like Schwarber who did what he did in the playoffs, and people just assumed that's what his season's going to be like. Even guys with a little more experience, guys like Rizzo's had a couple different slumps where he had to end up batting in the leadoff spot. So I think a lot of it's just growing pains and learning how to handle this new role of being
leadoff spot has not been the problem for them since that Rizzo, whoever else they throw out there is hitting home runs at leadoff. We'll move on. Buy or sell two. Jimmy Butler's intro, the press conference with the T-Wolves at the Mall of America. Listen to this.
My phone's in my back pocket right now. If whoever has anything to say to me, feel free. 773-899-6071.
He gave his number out to anybody who wanted to talk about some of the static he had with the Bulls.
Definitely leave a message.
And that's what his voicemail sounded like when June Lee, the reporter, called it. Nina, buy or sell Butler here?
I'm selling it. It's great that he actually gave his real number, but if he really wanted to win the NBA's petty wars, he would have given out Antoine Walker's number or Minnesota, the ticket office's number, because they're going to be a more entertaining show than Chicago this year.
Kalisha?
No, I got to buy this. This was an act of courage, even if a somewhat questionable one where a guy goes, I'm in Minnesota. Nobody really cares about Minnesota. I'm just going to throw my number out there and see what happens.
Sarah Spain?
I'm selling the location of the presser as Mall of America. I'm buying his transition to Sideshow Bob is nearly complete. And I am also buying this move because, listen, there's really no way for you to combat people coming at you for a bad attitude and not being a good clubhouse guy once you're gone. You might as well get to the new place, start with a fresh and clean slate by just putting it all out there.
Isola?
Yeah, and I'm going to give out Sarah Spain's number. Here's the thing about Jimmy Butler. He's thrilled to be there in Minnesota. He's been showing up everywhere. He's happy that he's with Tom Thibodeau. I think he got caught up in the moment. That's a big-time mistake that he made giving out his
You think that's a mistake? I think it's a great move. I mean, you can always turn off your voicemail. It doesn't really matter. I think
He's got like two groupie phones. It's
calling
fine.
him.
I think he planned it in advance. Do you think he planned it in advance? I mean, you don't actually just put it out there without already having that voicemail set up saying, if you're coming with hate, leave a message. I love that. We'll move on. Buy or sell three. Blake Griffin. Free agency is 2 days away from him. I think you'd all agree. It became a lot more free when Chris Paul was sent off, and now the talk of Oklahoma City. I mean, it's been going on for a while. It's where he's born and raised. It's where the MVP of the league plays. And the report is, Oklahoma and elsewhere, that it's been going on in pursuit for the last year. It would be a sign and trade. Tim, can you see Griffin in OKC?
I can. You know, he has some of his best memories there from right down the street in Norman. A lot's going to depend on what happens after midnight Friday and if Russell Westbrook signs a 5-year deal. If that happens and you have the idea that he's going to stay there, then Griffin or somebody else, I can see the Thunder landing that player.
Sarah Spain?
Great times in college. Not sure if a guy who's been in L.A. this long then wants to go back to that market. At the same time, they're looking at about 8 figures above the cap space, and they need to be about $30 million under it to sign him. So that's some very creative sign and trades. I'd love to watch that pick and roll between him and Westbrook. I just don't think it seems realistic.
Yeah, logistically, Frank, how would this work with the cap issues that OKC has?
No, it's going to be a major problem. And I think Westbrook's waiting to see how Oklahoma City does in free agency before he signs a 5-year extension. I also think that Blake Griffin, now that he gets a chance to be the number one guy in L.A., I think that appeals to him. Let's face it, he's pretty good in those commercials, too.
So you think he's staying? You think he's sticking with the Clippers? Kimes after the horn, please.
Yeah, I don't see this happening. As great as a fit it would be, because of the sign and trade, he would have to tell them he was definitely coming beforehand. Doesn't really make sense. He can make more money on and off the court in Los Angeles.
But he wouldn't be playing with the MVP of the league. In fact, he'd be playing with a diminished team that we just all said was getting blown up. That's shocking for me that you guys are putting that out there. Ooh, Kalisha, Isola. 25 points, Timmy, that usually gets you into the showdown. Not today. Isola 13.
Give out your number, Sarah. Give it out.
Guys, Spain, showdown
next. Already.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Kimes and Spade and Showdown. Showdown one better play from the Diamond. Nolan Arenado from his back. Or Scott Schebler. Spider-Man Homecoming. Mina Kimes, your answer.
I'm going to go with Nolan Arenado. He made it look like he could do plays like that in his sleep by actually doing it on his back. He is also my MVP pick currently, so I think this is just bolstering his case.
All right, we didn't ask about your MVP pick. Listen, Arenado missed the initial grab. That's what made it such a great play. If he just made that first grab, it wouldn't have been so dramatic. The other guy climbed the wall. Goes to the other guy, whose name I can't pronounce.
He pulled it off, though.
You can't pronounce his name? I'm giving it an MVP pick. We got extra information from Kimes there. There's 2 points. Showdown 2. Courtside bar at the Atlanta Hawks game starting next year. And the barbershop. And Top Golf swing simulators in the suites. Is this going to help or hurt the basketball experience in Atlanta, Sarah?
Well, if you need to get a shape up and work on your drive at a basketball game, then you don't deserve to have those tickets. I know this is very get off my lawn, but can't we just watch a basketball game and catch a T-shirt from a cannon? Is that asking too much of our young children these days?
I'm going to go old man shakes his fist at this guy here, too. I don't understand. You go to a game so you don't have to watch it at a sports bar, and teams are responding by turning the game into a sports bar? It just seems counterintuitive to me.
Seems counterintuitive to me that you're both getting a point. But Kimes is still winning the FaceTime. 30 seconds.
Oh, so last summer I went to Korea to write about Korean baseball players who flipped their bats after home runs. One of the players I interviewed was Jae-gyun Hwang in the Lotte Giants. He was just called up by the San Francisco Giants and in his very third at-bat hit a home run. He did not flip his bat, but you could tell he wanted to at the very end of it. So, Jae-gyun, please flip your bat. Show us your glorious tradition here in America.
Mina Kimes, 5 wins.
Love it.
Back to back. Good job. Hey, Sarah Spain, before we go, I saw you clap back at Lou Williams, the athletic bones that we all possessed here. You threw the javelin in college and you're going at Lou Williams. Not bad.
Yeah, college heptathlon. We got Frank, college soccer, Mina, ping pong, Tim, tennis. You ran a mile.